Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan, and in this video we're going to be looking at the unique lore of magic for the Ogre Kingdoms, the Lore of the Great Maw, also known as gut magic. So we're going to look over all the spells, how they're used and so on, and to see if this lore of magic is for you. Let's not waste any more time, however, and let's jump right in because there's a bit to discuss. As always, we're going to work in a clockwise formation, and we have Brain Gobbler. This is a hex spell which reduces leadership by -16 for 18 seconds, and if you decide to augment it by overcasting, this then does the same leadership reduction but by 36 seconds instead. While this spell might not sound too interesting, it's quite cheap, only costing 4 winds of magic and 6 winds of magic if overcasted, which means that you can use this with multiple spellcasters if you so wish, and it's not going to go too heavy into your magic pool. It's only on single targets, so yeah, it's not the best spell. However, reducing enemy leadership is always in your favor, as that obviously means that you can cause them to break much easier, and you've already got some benefits to do that anyway, as a grand majority of your ogres have fear, and the others, like the big monsters and so on, cause terror. You're already doing some pretty good anti-leadership on anything that you may face. Of course, unless they're immune to psychology or undead. I'm testing it here on some Noblars, which have low leadership anyway, so obviously they're going to break quite quickly, but anything like this, or basic humans and so on, yeah, you can get them away, and then you can just start chasing them down. Like I said, it's a cheap spell, so it's not the best, but it's very effective. Next we have Troll Guts, and this is a regeneration spell. It's healing, and it heals for a decent amount of time. The only thing is, it's very overcosted, costing 16 winds of magic and then 26 if you decide to overcast, which increases the effect duration and quite high as it is for almost a complete minute. But yeah, it's very expensive. It's for single targets. I'd say that this is pretty much only good for monsters if you use it on Stonehorns and so on, or characters, but it's not good for your units. And yeah, look, I'm just gonna outright say it. Some spells for Warhammer 3, I don't know why, but they're stupid expensive. Like, you can get modifiers to reduce winds of magic and so on, but even then, I would say that this is not worth it whatsoever. It's just way too much. I'm not sure where they're coming up with these values. Like, it's very useful. As I'm testing it out, I'm using like a Stonehorn, which is fighting against some Iron Guts, so obviously it's going to be taking a lot of damage, and it's regenerating really quickly, so that's pretty good. But yeah, it's only for monsters. This healing spell cannot really be justified on anything else. I've already logged a complaint about this because, wow, 16 winds of magic, it's a lot for healing. I'd say keep it at 7, 8 is fine, especially if it's just going to be for monsters, and then 16 if it's going to be overcasted. It's still pretty good, but yeah. Next we have Bone Crusher, which is a explosion spell which does a small strike area, nothing too big, but a decent amount of damage, armor piercing too. If you decide to then overcast it, it becomes a bit more expensive as always, but does a lot more armor piercing damage. It's pretty good, it's cheap, but yeah, it's still expensive, but it's cheaper. It's got a decent range too, 200 meters is quite far, and you can use this for pretty much anything heavily armored and so on. I'm just going to test it out on some Noblars here because I like killing Noblars, it's just really fun, and it does a lot of damage. Even with basic Noblars, you're basically deleting units with just this thing. Obviously, you have to make sure that you're positioning it correctly and so on, because this can do damage to your units. But as a whole, I'd say the spell is very good, either if you overcast it or just use the standard version itself. The ogres themselves don't have a lot of damaging spells, so you're going to want to use this, especially if you have a high reserve rate and so on. It very much depends if you want to use this or its ultimate spell, but we'll get to that very soon. As a whole, I'd say you'd still be using this. You're going to be fighting a lot of Skaven eventually. You're going to be fighting hordes of demons. This can do its damage and this can get rid of stuff. Next we have Toothcracker, a pretty decent spell in all honesty, as it's an augment but area of effect, a decent size one too. It increases your armor plus 30 and your missile resistance plus 22%. It lasts for 25 seconds, but if you decide to augment it, it'll last for 50 seconds, so it's a decent amount of time. Now you can use this for pretty much anything, increasing armor if you're fighting anything hand to hand, or if you're dealing with a lot of range, which if you decide to invade Grand Cafe, you're going to be dealing with a lot of range being thrown at you, so yeah, it's multi-purpose, it's very useful. The fact that it's an area of effect also is really useful too. I like the spell. I really like the spell because it's cheap and it's multi-purpose. It's definitely one of those better augments because of the area of effect. I tested out the spell using standard ogre balls on my side, whereas my enemy had ogre balls with additional hand weapons. They should be able to do more damage, and in fact they do, but the spell itself kept it relatively even, so they kind of cancelled each other out. Obviously, say for example, Iron Guts would do a lot more damage and so on, but I wanted to level up the playing field here, and it was pretty useful. If you then use this on Iron Guts, you'd get up to, what, 120 armor, which is really, really good. It depends on what you want to use it, but it's multi-purpose and it's area of effect. Like I said, this is a good spell, and it's well worth the cost. Next we have Ball Gorgeou, another augment but single target this time, however it is quite cheap. This increases armor piercing weapon damage by 25% and melee attack plus 24 for a duration of 17 seconds. Now if you decide to then increase it by augmenting it, overcasting and so on, you can then get it to last for 34 seconds, which is a decent amount of time and only costs 7 winds of magic. So in terms of testing, this time I decided to use Ogre Balls with additional hand weapons, but fighting against Iron Guts. Iron Guts themselves are much stronger than standard balls, and I was able to do a decent amount of damage. It was more or less, depending on where you look at it and who hit first and so on, because they did get the charge. It was pretty even, and I'd say that this is a really good spell, and the fact that it's cheap is also very useful. Keep in mind that a lot of the ogre spells are very overcosted, whereas this one is priced quite fairly. Yes, it's single, and you won't be able to get it in an area of effect if you decide to overcast, but yeah, I'd say that this spell is worth it. You can do this on pretty much anything. You can use this on ogres, you can use this on your big monsters, and yeah, worth the cost, totally. And lastly, we have the granddaddy of all spells, the Maw. This is a large explosion which does a lot of damage. It's not really represented too well there with everything, with the stats and so on, because it's a huge explosion area, and this does damage. It's very expensive. 20 winds of magic on its standard form, and then if you decide to overcast it, it's 26, and that will then increase the damage output and so on. But this is the granddaddy of all spells. I found it very useful when dealing with massive hordes, especially if you're dealing with, say for example, lots of Nurgle and so on, which, you know, it's Warhammer 3, you will be. But the explosions themselves are very satisfying to watch. You can use this versus everything. I'm testing it against Norblars because, I mean, it's just kind of funny to see the Norblars, and yeah, it pretty much deletes units. It'll make them break without too much of a problem. This is something that you need to be very careful about where you're placing, because it will do a lot of damage, and it will even damage you too, but this is so worth it. This has become easily my favorite spell throughout the whole lore. Obviously its high price makes it extremely situational, but it's something that you'll want to use, especially if you find yourself in a losing battle and you've got your enemy scrunched up. But yeah, it's very satisfying. And obviously we can talk about the passive ability Blood Gruel, which is a regeneration for your spellcasters. It triggers anytime they cast a spell, so at least they can heal up, because you're not going to heal up with a standard healing spell anyway, and it's pretty decent. Obviously you want your spellcasters up there in personal fighting, because your butchers can do damage, so them being able to be there, slaughtering and getting health back, that's going to work out quite well. But what do you guys think about the lore of the Great Maw? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let's start a bit of a discussion. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince and OGRE for subscribing to us at our fame level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our king level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel has been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very soon. Have a good day.